All right, we're going to get started right on time, like we said. Thanks, everybody, for joining this afternoon. Welcome to today's webinar series number 3, Compliance, Putting It All Together. My name is Paul Hager. I'm the CEO and president of a company called Information Technology Professionals out of Madison, Wisconsin. We offer our support and services around compliance technology services around the United States, but primarily focusing on Wisconsin and the Midwest. So thanks again for joining today. You'll see lots of vendor logos on this first slide. Just understand that ITP represents the balance of all the best in technology, but we're going to be talking today about compliance and pulling it all together, which is why it's more than about just one product, just one solution, just one technology. We're going to talk about the business, people, process, legal, and technology pieces that have to come together. Again, putting it all together as a comprehensive solution. And really having your arms around compliance as an overall framework for an organization. And whether you're small, medium, or enterprise, more and more businesses are having to grab their arms around compliance in a broader, more general way. And it doesn't matter how big your organization is, you still need to follow good, solid compliance practices, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So thanks, everyone, for giving a little bit of your time out. Hopefully you find something valuable here today. And we'll give you opportunities to follow up with us afterwards if we can be of further assistance to your organization. Again, my name is Paul Hager, the token slide with a picture of myself on it. Again, we're a managed service provider offering services, and we'll talk about what we do to pull this together for our customers today. I come from and have background in legal and other compliance industries, as well as our business supports about 280 businesses around the Midwest. And a broad range of technology and business challenges that we support. So IT is a struggle, and healthcare IT, which we're focused on today, is just facing an unprecedented amount of challenges, right? The digitization of healthcare, healthcare records, just is causing an explosive amount of data growth. And while the desire to have instant on, always available access to that data is becoming a requirement, becoming life or death, becoming a matter of getting funding from the federal government or not, getting payments from insurance providers or not. All while all of that is going on, the drive for that instant care, more digital healthcare is occurring. We also at the same time have new compliance requirements coming down, it seems like, every year. And so the challenge to operate inside of an increasingly digital world and an increasingly digital compliance world is just meaning that more and more time and effort is needing to go into making sure that your business is ready to handle the compliance challenges that you're faced with. Healthcare data is increasingly unstructured, meaning that it's not just clinicians' notes, it's not just the very direct in front of you data. You see here a quote from Health IT Outcomes that an estimated 75% of healthcare data generated today is from unstructured sources, such as digital devices, emails, notes, laboratory tests, imaging, telematics, and even third-party sources. Every organization uses third-party tools these days in order to get the amount of the job done, right? So new technologies and new thinking are needed to fully realize this healthcare data revolution, and then protecting that data from a backup, retention, compliance, privacy standpoint. Obviously, the next line is nothing new to anyone on this phone call. We certainly have a rise in cyber attacks, data theft, ransomware, holding people ransom using data as their mechanism. While 95% of provider executives believe their organization is protected against cybersecurity attacks, only 36% have access management policies, and just 34% have a cybersecurity audit process. We cannot emphasize enough that you need to be doing annual risk assessments, regardless of whether you're HIPAA, PCI, GDPR, whatever your compliance framework is in, and even if you're not under a specific compliance framework for some reason, and you joined us on the call today, doing an annual risk assessment from an outside provider, giving that just 1,000-foot third-party view of where your risk is to your business is a requirement under HIPAA to do the risk assessment, but B is just a good business decision. It's going to hopefully decrease your insurance rates for your organization. It's going to give you insight into areas that you maybe didn't know were open weaknesses, right? The most recent Breach Barometer year in review report in healthcare and cybersecurity found in 2016, number of health data breaches averaged at least one per day. Those breaches affected more than 27 million patient records. The Ponemon Institute report in 2016, data breaches were estimated to cost the healthcare industry $6.2 billion annually, and that half of data breaches at healthcare organizations are the result of criminal activities. So it's either outside actors, outside nation states, hackers, activists, whatever it might be. It's also inside data loss, not putting your arms and walls fully around what a disgruntled employee could do, or even not a disgruntled employee, just an unknowing employee that downloaded or accessed data on a mobile device or laptop that you let walk out your doors, et cetera. Again, we always give that example of what if, just play the terrible scenario out, someone walked into your organization today with a USB thumb drive, plugged in, hit print to PDF on a range of protected information, saved that to a USB drive and walked out. That's a really bad day. And what walls have you put up? What frameworks have you written out? What policies do you have? What technology did you put in place to prevent that, detect that, report that, and ultimately not, obviously, hopefully not have that bad day happen. And like I talked about already, while we have the expansion of digitization, we have an increase in compliance regulations. HIPAA, high-tech, and now May of 2018, GDPR, the General Data Protection, coming in as a European privacy policy. It does not trump HIPAA, so just so everyone knows, HIPAA still controls, but GDPR extends rights and privacy rights to your dual citizenship patients and people that are not only in Europe, but European folks who are traveling wherever they are in the United States, which is why you've gotten an influx in your mailbox of reconfirm, reconfirm, reconfirm that it's okay to put you on this list, and why every website you're going to, including our website, now has that banner accepting our online privacy policy, acceptable use policy, and cookies, because GDPR is in effect and has some really stiff penalties right out of the gate. And we'll talk a little bit about what GDPR is as well today. Compliance in healthcare is a business, it's a process, legal and technical challenge. While I understand that I'm speaking as the owner of both a business and a business that operates primarily by providing technology solutions, when it comes to security and compliance, that is a broader discussion. And it typically involves a team of people at your organization and ours. And when I say team, your organization might be smaller, and that team is one person, or that team is two people. And that's, again, where consultants like us can help and fill those gaps for you. But if you're a large organization, your team will often need to interact with the business side of the house, change processes and write new processes. You will need to work with a good law firm, and you will need to have or good in-house counsel, and you'll need to solve the technology challenges to reduce your risk footprint and surface as you go through. Again, this world is being rapidly redefined. Meeting the high demands of your customers is a challenge. And it's a challenging job in the digital era. Doctors, clinicians, and patients expect immediate access to EHRs from any location and any device. We at ITP support some of these platforms on mobile devices, and it's increasingly critical that this health data that's growing at alarming rates, it's creating storage troubles, backup troubles, data sharing nightmares, all while these regulatory requirements and penalties continue to increase. Again, what we need to be able to do is enable you to have an always-on enterprise, regardless of where you end up having your technology, whether that be a virtual environment that's on-premise, a physical environment on-premise, a cloud environment, or most likely, a lot of businesses have some in all those camps, right? They might have a hosted private cloud, they might have a private cloud in their own premise, some actual physical devices, and leveraging some of the cloud for what it has to offer. Now more than ever, data consumers in healthcare are looking for assurance and reliability and peace of mind, whether it's in research, treatment care, the patients themselves, access and protection and mobility of data is more vital than ever. We have another presentation, and we actually have an assessment process that we do called Shadow IT Discovery. We go into businesses and we help put in some tools that help you discover where you have IT going on in your business that you didn't even know about it. Because of this proliferation of data and the access and the smarts of end users and the ability for them to go to a website today sign up for a Dropbox account or a Box account or whatever you call it, and take data, put it up there as a means of sharing, all with good intentions, but not following a strong compliance portion and strategy. Understanding as this digital transformation goes on and ideas are trying to be shifted from business strategy and executives, they're finding themselves ill-prepared for this disruption. The technology isn't scaling, the disaster recovery is inadequate, and if you have issues, breaches, challenges, your staff, your public perception, and your consumers are ultimately losing trust. The IT environment isn't based physically anymore. It's gone virtual, it's gone hosted, it's gone cloud native. And healthcare companies need to enable data availability and nonstop business continuity, digital transformation agility, and ultimately getting your business to the point where it's not just compliance, but looking at analytics and visibility and making more informed business decisions using BI, data sciences, data lakes, and then you need to protect those as those become core portions of your business as well. The cloud is not going away. It is not a fad, right? The BCC forecast is its most optimistic to date. A recent Frost & Sullivan report predicted that the global healthcare cloud computing market would reach $10 billion by 2021. Another one projected $14.8 billion by 2022. Barriers surrounding cloud include patient privacy and data security concerns. Still, more than 80% of healthcare IT organizations use cloud computing to store and manage data in their networks in some capacity, right? Office 365 is one example, taking that productivity collaboration piece, that email data that contains some PHI, some sensitive information, and shifting that onto a platform that has some compliance checkboxes already checked, and somebody like Microsoft is a way that healthcare organizations and organizations in general are meeting compliance easier. And this is where cloud helps, right? Email, whether it's on premise or in the cloud, has the same end user and staff experience. There might be a different cost structure to paying for email every single month, but you get to check some checkboxes in your compliance strategy because you're offloading some of that risk to a third party that has a deep investment and accurately meeting compliance standards in a company in Microsoft and Microsoft's Compliance Trust Center. Again, doing that growth in cloud computing, there's an increased demand for 24/7 anywhere access to patient data, images, and reports. North America will lead in overall spending as healthcare policies promote lower costs and outpatient care, according to report the same BCC forecast that we talked about before. Again, compliance is the business, people, and process. Before we get to the technology, we have to talk about just having a good compliance framework as an organizational process and structure before we even talk about technology. Yes, we're a technology company, but we're a business consulting company, and we're invested in creating a partnership with your business and helping you solve these problems, even if it's not our expertise, even if it's meeting or connecting you with people with experience in compliance frameworks or the legality of it. We want to be your connector and partner in helping you solve some of these challenges. So the first step in that is establishment and adoption of written policies and procedure to promote your organization's commitment. You have to have the commitment and write it down. You have to identify an individual or team to serve as a compliance officer who's ultimately responsible for monitoring these compliance efforts and enforcing the standards. That individual probably should not be your IT manager, right, or your director. It needs to be somebody outside of the stack who's got a separate view of the business and operations, so that there's not a conflict of interest there, that it's not the same person saying we're good, that you're hired to do that work on the street. You got to establish reporting systems that encourage individuals to make complaints without fear of retaliation. You have to have a commitment to conducting formal education and training for all levels of employees, not only around compliance, but security, privacy, and technology, around HIPAA, GDPR, and any regulatory structure that you fall within. You have to have an ongoing auditing, monitoring of these systems, effectiveness of your promotion. This is your risk assessment process that you're doing annually. You have to have developments of policies to enforce these standards of conduct. You have to have disciplinary measures for employees who fail. And we talked about the data breaches in healthcare. A large percentage of those, again, are not outside actors. They are inside individuals who are poorly trained or are doing nefarious acts. When vulnerabilities are identified, corrective action must be conducted in response to any potential violation area, and that there's a plan, there's remediation, there's steps that are being taken. From a compliance legal standpoint, a strong partnership with the legal team, whether it be internal or external. And HIPAA and high-tech having BAA updating and a management process around that. Are you looking at your BAA? Are you updating it on a regular basis? Are you reevaluating your suppliers and contractors and making sure that they have signed the most current version of your BAA? That you've identified security policies both internally and with your external partners. If you've outsourced IT, what is your contractual relationship with that entity, their BAA or additional? Do they have security policies and procedures, things like that? And then do you have data management and GDPR policies written now? This is a new area over the last 2 years that, again, if you are processing data about any individual who has European citizenship, who may be in Europe, or is a European citizen now working over here for you, you have new requirements and you need to have different data management policies. And those are documents that maybe you don't have written yet because you just have a BAA. Maybe that's in addition to, or maybe it's additional language adding data management discussions into that. So what is this new GDPR, Paul, you keep talking about? I'm not going to cover it in depth. We have a separate series that goes in depth into GDPR. Before you shut down and say, wait a minute, I'm on a healthcare webinar, I'm supposed to be learning about HIPAA, that's all people are supposed to talk about. I'd say pause and wait. Let me explain to you why GDPR matters even to US-based companies and even small mid-sized companies. GDPR, the General Data Protection and Regulation, is really the culmination of rules on privacy among EU states within the European Union. And anyone who offers goods or service to people in the EU or collect or analyze data tied to people in the EU, no matter where you are located, right? So if you have a website that can be accessed in Europe, you are gathering IP information of who's visiting your website. Your web server is logging that today. That data is GDPR protected data. So unless when GDPR came out, you went to your website company and said, make sure my website is inaccessible in Europe, it doesn't matter if you don't sell to European people. It doesn't matter if you don't make money off of selling in Europe. You need to care about GDPR. In general, you heard as this became really public as a part of Mark Zuckerberg being in front of the Senate hearings. You know, Facebook obviously has customer data about people in Europe. Facebook can't shut down in Europe. But you heard Mark Zuckerberg talk about how he believes that this is really a foundation. The enhanced personal privacy rights is going to be a wave that will eventually flow into the United States anyway. So maybe start building the processes around compliance in this area, even if you don't have a ton of risk in GDPR today, that will eventually come down the line. GDPR in general enhances your personal privacy rights. There's an increased duty and care for protecting data. There's mandatory breach reporting, and the breach reporting has to occur within 30 to 90 days based on what it is. And there are significant penalties for non-compliance, really significant. PCI, HIPAA, those regulatory bodies and agencies will issue fines when you have a data breach, and they specifically disallow people from forming class action lawsuits and suing the owners of the company that has the breach and that company individually. GDPR is the opposite. There is GDPR regulatory agencies. There's one regulatory agency per European Union nation state. But then as a whole, they've specifically granted the right to make lawsuits available to people. And that's why when GDPR went into effect at the end of May, the very next day, an $8 billion lawsuit dropped against Facebook and Google, which was a class action, a privacy rights law firm got in conjunction with a group of people in a class action lawsuit and dropped a civil lawsuit immediately. And that lawsuit will transfer. The United States has treaties with Europe to make international commerce work, and that lawsuit will come over from Europe into the U.S. How did we get here? GDPR is not new. It's really an extension of this 1995 EU Data Protection Directive. It's just as that DPA in 1995, 1998 got dispersed into individual countries within Europe, everybody was making their own twist on the privacy laws. It was difficult to manage. So GDPR was an attempt to go back to the drawing board and really pull together all those privacy regulations into something that each individual country could sign on to and create more of a standard. It went into effect May 25th. And this, I think a lot of US companies hoped that this date would get pushed out. Oftentimes, if you have to do PCI work, you saw that EMV chip date get pushed out and get pushed out and pushed out. In fact, when they said this was going to happen, May 25th of 2018, they've been saying that for 2 years, and they held to the date, and enforcement did go live. Data is the center of everything today, digital era, whether it be healthcare or not. It's being used in new ways, volume is growing, and automation is occurring. Digital disruption is happening everywhere. But at the base of it, GDPR is saying that privacy is a fundamental right. It's becoming key to social and business issues. And it's an important step in defining a new data privacy era. If you're just a United States company today, you may not know this, but in Europe, if you get let go from a job in Europe, you have to be given a copy of your email data. It's not you, the business owner, that owns the data. In Europe, you have the right to your own data and information about you. And GDPR is just an expansion and extension of that. And you better believe that that will eventually translate, I think, into the United States. Yes, there will be lobbying by big business in the United States that will attempt to slow that down. But I think with Facebook and just the number of breaches we have in general, there is increasing pressure to make more privacy more realistic. So this is not just for the European Union, right? These rules are on companies and government agencies and nonprofits and other organizations that offer goods and services to people in the EU or collect and analyze data tied to any EU resident, no matter where they are in the world. So it's applicable to all organizations of all sizes and all industries. It comes down to personal data, customer data, email content, photos. It even includes CCTV footage, meaning that if you have cameras, security cameras in your facilities today, and a person who has a European identity, born in Europe, has a passport from Europe, walks by one of your cameras, that footage is considered GDPR protected footage. Now we won't see, I think that's an extreme case. It is specifically written into the rules and regulations. I think we'll need to see litigation have to happen to really flesh out how that rule is going to be imposed. But as the letter of the regulation is now, if you have a camera, you better have a sign saying we're recording you to give people the choice to not be in that area and not be recorded. But you probably have some regulations regarding protecting that recorded data if it's of someone. Now the technology part, right? Security and compliance, using technology tools to make that happen. It starts by having the existing framework and meeting GDPR, meeting HIPAA or high tech. Really, it starts with just starting from some policy frame or some existing compliance framework when it comes to security and technology. So ISO 27001 or NIST, going through an NIST assessment, following that structure. If you followed one of these compliance areas and you have a compliance strategy in each of those segments in your technology, and either you have that checked off and have that technology in place, or you have a path to have that in place, I think you're going to be in a much better situation, regardless of what new regulatory stuff comes down. Start from a foundational framework. Work with an organization that can work back from one of these standards, because the National Institute of Security and Technology is not going to disappear next year. They're still going to be a gold standard. And meeting that and adhering to that on a consistent basis will always mean that you are 90% the way there on a lot of compliance frameworks. Have really strong IT fundamentals. How do you make IT fundamentals in a short list in a PowerPoint? Antivirus is absolutely table stakes, but isn't enough anymore. Absolutely making sure that you are patching devices in a timely manner. Likely expanding that into log analytics of some nature, which is difficult for small businesses. But every device that you have in your network is producing a log, and those logs cannot possibly be reviewed by humans in enough time. So you have to have some software technology get involved in that process to analyze, look at those logs, and pull out the important and relevant information. Probably some out-of-band security tools, things not a part of Windows, not a part of your operating system. not a part of antivirus, but just watch the behavior on a device and can send alerts to a security operations team if they detect anomalies going on within a device within the network. Encryption, any device that can be picked up and taken out of your facility that has access to anything that might be considered sensitive data. All laptops have come with a trusted platform chip now for a good 8 to 10 years. As long as you have Windows Pro, 10 Pro or 7 Pro or 7 Enterprise, you can turn on BitLocker, which is a built-in encryption technology to enable encryption on your devices. You might need to engage with the company to help you get that set up or manage it, so it's not every individual with their own encryption key on each of their laptops. But I think encryption is part of table stakes for good IT security. Backup and DR. Oftentimes, if you do find yourself in the unfortunate position of getting a virus, one of the best ways and the way you're going to have to lean on is how good your backup and disaster recovery solution is. How quickly can you get back up? It's more likely that you're going to have a major virus issue that's going to try to take down your data than it is likely that you're going to have a fire or a tornado hit your building, I think. Having a SOC, Security Operations Center. So a lot of small to mid-sized companies are not going to employ people to stare at security alert screens, but you can leverage companies like ours that already have either that team internally or partnerships where we can put tools in place that meet some of these standards and then automate that process for you on a per device or per user basis. Some trends that ITP just sees in general, as we talk about what do we see in the industry, what's going on. We see cloud continues to be in the discussion no matter where. Is it a compliance easy button? In some ways it is, because companies like Microsoft have invested in meeting the NIST, the ISO standard, FISMA, FERPA, HIPAA, high-tech, those are all checkboxes. Microsoft, GDPR are all checkboxes Microsoft already has. So that takes some of your compliance risk out. And in general, Microsoft has the capacity to monitor and manage a data center and monitor its security with billions of dollars in their back pockets, way more than any one individual company can. But as you let that data leave your network, that adds other pieces to it, right? There's process and people challenges to using that technology in a remote way. We see a decrease in on-premise systems. They're not being eliminated. Hybrid is still the name of the game. We're definitely see people take on more of this disaster recovery as a service when it comes to meeting uptime requirements, outsourcing that and leveraging a company or product that and the cloud is a great place for that. We've seen hyper-converged. Instead of buying traditional servers, separate storage SANs, we're seeing a rise in the use of hyper-converged and those technologies, simplifying the data center and allowing that data center to exist in an easier bucket, single panes of glass to manage it. And then security continues to be a challenge for large and small healthcare practices. It doesn't matter how big you are, the same compliance requirements tend to fall on you. It just means you have less people to help execute all those pieces. So we have a case study. I won't read through this whole thing, but we worked with an agency, a healthcare agency local to us here. They've struggled to put the teams together and to have consistent direction around IT. They were a healthcare organization. They weren't a technology company. And they just kept getting further and further behind. They had high turnover when it came to the management team within their IT structure because they got frustrated with their inability to move projects along and really communicate effectively. And that's what we see. It's just that big gap between the very top of an organization and the people that need to get stuff done to make security and compliance happen, to make IT infrastructure happen. Either the top can't understand it, or more than likely, it's just a difficulty in explaining it in a way that management at the upper levels will understand the importance of making investments in infrastructure or moves to cloud or strategic 3-year plans. This customer could just never get their arms around that. They were good at healthcare, bad at IT, but IT was mission critical to make their healthcare happen. So what did we do? We stepped in and we made a holistic outsourced approach. We replaced everything from their interns, service desk, network engineers, all the way up to the CIO level. And that's an extreme case, right? We're not always in the business of displacing entire groups of IT, but it's just an example of how robust our team is and how whether you need the entirety of our team to come in and manage IT, or you just need one of these areas, you've got service desk, you need network engineers, You've got a CIO, you need everything lower than that. You have everything lower than that, you need strategic direction. We're going to fill the gaps, and we're going to bolt on to your existing environment. But you can see now, just a quote directly from this customer, this shift to total outsource allowed us to continue to leverage resources who know and are experienced in our environment, as well as the ITP experts. Access to great resources plus a defined path for growth has greatly impacted our day-to-day IT operations, and things are moving much smoother now, back to taking care of patients instead of dealing with IT outages or challenges, right? So as they transitioned some of their employees, we displaced them, but we did not let them go. We brought them into our ITP team. And again, from our culture and our resource standpoint, they became happier. There was a huge difference in their attitude, and we actually were able to provide better service with similar people, plus all of everything we had to offer. Here at ITP, we enable healthcare enterprises with 24/7, 365 availability for their professionals, employees, and patients alike. Provide the highest level of service, establishing best practices for automation and risk management so you can remain always on and compliant. So whether it's these compliance assessments, whether it's documentation support, internal or external scanning, DR as a service offerings here in the Midwest or in the public cloud, fully managed services, fully managed compliance services, what we call Secure Score, whether that be managing your Microsoft Secure Score that's inside of Office 365, or we have a solution which applies a secure score to every device inside of your network so that we can give you visibility and visibility up your management chain that here are the devices that have a security risk on them. Here's their exact score on a 0 to 100, and we can help manage to that, fix that, remediate that for you. Fully managed threat defense, 24/7 SOC, the $1 million ransomware guarantee program is something new that we have through a partnership with a product called SentinelOne and a SOC. So that's a product that goes on top of your machines, your endpoints, your servers, and it's watching for behavior-based activities. It's looking for examples of or indications of compromise. It's not looking for a virus. It's looking for activities on a machine that look like an intruder is in there. And the SentinelOne company provides a guarantee that you will not have ransomware. And you will not have a virus impact those systems. And part of that is because it's not just technology, it's that software solution, but it's also a security operations center that is watching that solutions dashboard 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Looking for more resources, we have itprosusa.com, industries/medical. Visit our website, our blog. We're always communicating. We have educational webinars like this. If you're looking for more information, reach out to us. We have contact forms all over the website. We'll respect your privacy, but reach out and we'll get you to the right person within our organization. And give us a call wherever you are. Wherever you are in this compliance journey, whatever your needs might be, please reach out to us. We're here to help.